Guys, welcome to my day off. Alright, now this is a ISX Cummins. I believe it's an ISX 15. And anyway, this is on a 587 Peterbilt. And we got problems with the air in it. Not the air conditioning, but the air pressure. Now, right back up underneath here is your air compressor on these trucks. But unlike most of them, you look around and you're not going to see the air compressor governor. And you follow the air lines back and you can see the steel line that runs way back up underneath there. Now, first off, I feel this line. This line here is hot, which tells me that the air compressor is working. It is putting out air. Now, this is the inlet side, that's the outlet side. And so it is putting out air. So they come around inside the truck. Now, as you can see, we got air in the primary tank, but nothing in the secondary. And I just aired this up until the governor kicked off. So, anyway, I've already gone around with a spray bottle of soapy water to check for leaks. And that's probably the best way that you can find air leaks on these trucks, is just a spray bottle with soapy water. Now, you can take it to the shop and they'll use that electronic ear. And I'll tell you from experience, I took this truck in and they use that electronic ear on it. And they actually tried 3 or 4 times. And they said there wasn't no leaks. But this thing right here would leak down to 60 psi. And it'd do it in an hour. I mean, that's a pretty good leak to lose, 60, 70 pounds of pressure in an hour. Anyway, I brought it back here to the house, got the soapy water, and I sprayed all over it. And I found 23 little bitty leaks in this. It wasn't one big one, it was a bunch of little bitty ones, so they couldn't find them. Anyway, I fixed all those. And now this incident has come up, over a year later, that I'm not getting no pressure to the secondary air. Now, the secondary air system in these trucks runs your splitter for your shifter, and without air in that secondary tank, you can only go 1 through 5 gears. You can't go up to the high end and go 6 through 10. And you also can't air up your seats. And if you try to air up your seat, it'll go flat. I mean, there's no air whatsoever in the seats to air them up. And you can't move your steering wheel because that's a secondary system. Now, whenever you go to do this, and I'll show you what I found was wrong with this thing. And what it is the air compressor governor. Or, not governor, the air dryer. I'm sorry. And the air dryer has only got pressure coming out of the primary side and not the secondary side. So, I'm only getting air from the air compressor to the air dryer, and then from the air dryer it's going just to the primary and not to the secondary side, which I'll show you that. So anyway, looks like we're going to be replacing this air dryer, and they're about $600, and you take it to a shop. And now on this particular truck, it's about $600 for the air dryer. Now on other trucks they're a little bit cheaper, but anyway, first thing you want to do is you want to let all the air out of the system. Now, you can go out to the air tanks and pull the cables and stand there and wait, a few minutes for them to drain out. Me, I pump the brakes. And look how quick that air is going out of this thing just by pumping them brakes. And you want to take that air out of that system because you're going to be unhooking air lines and stuff, and you don't want to have 125 psi blow off in your face and, blow dirt and mud and gunk and all that in your face. It's not fun. There we go. There's no more air in the system. So you shut the key off. Now, on these trucks, on these Petes, or at least these 587s, you got to go back here and you got to wiggle up underneath the steps and around the exhaust, so make sure that your truck's not hot. Because if it is, you're going to have fun getting on around that exhaust pipe right there. And you got to squeeze in between the exhaust and all the rest of this mess and the air tanks. You got to squeeze up through there. in between the frame, and you got to wiggle yourself all the way up to about right in here on the truck, and then your air dryer is going to be on the inside of the frame. Anyway, I'll be back here in a second. It's going to take me a few minutes to wiggle my fat butt up underneath there, and then I'll show you what I'm doing. You guys can kind of see how tight it is going up through there, especially for a big guy. But all the way up there, you see where that red and black line are? Well, those are your battery cables. And your air dryer, if you look, you see those battery cables up this way just a little bit, or this side of the battery cables. That's the air dryer. That's what we're going for. Work out. As you can see, it's pretty tight for me up underneath here. But we'll manage it. Now, these here are quick connects. And if you push forward on that little collar, then you could pull that line out. Now see, we got air on that side. Don't want to lose it all. Now, we go over to the secondary, and we push that, and pull this line out. There's nothing. So we're only getting air out of this one side of the air dryer. And that's how I found out what's going on with this thing. Is I come in here, follow the lines back, and traced them to what side of what air tank was what. And once I got them traced back here, I found out the green is the secondary, the red's the primary. So I unhooked the primary and I still had air. I unhooked the secondary and there's nothing coming out here even with the truck running. And the truck at 100 PSI, we still are not getting no air out of this side. So we're gonna have to take this off and replace it. If I could figure out how that son of a gun is mounted. There we go, put a little light on the subject there. Anyway, we got a new air dryer on the way. So let's go ahead and pull this thing off. Okay, well, I got the main feed line off. I got the plug unhooked up here. It just snaps on with this little clip right there. You just lift up on that clip and pull and it comes off. And I got the air compressor governor, and this is your air compressor governor right here, mounted to the side of the air dryer. Anyway, I got the line unhooked from it, and the primary and secondary lines here. Now I got these 3 lines on this side that I replaced the fittings with compression fittings. Now, these quick connect fittings are known to leak on these trucks. And instead of going and spending $35, $40 on one of these, you can cut the tip of this line off so you get the right size, and you can go to like an Ace Hardware and you can get a pipe thread. This is pipe thread going into here. Every one of these are going to be pipe thread, but you can get a compression fitting that'll have a compression ring on here, and you just slide the nut up, you put the compression ring on, you stick it on the nipple, and then you tighten this up, and that's a better connection than these quick connects. But normally, if you gotta open up these systems again, or unhook them lines with those compression fittings, you have to replace them, but they're only about $2 or $3, as opposed to these things here. Some of them can run all the way up to $30. So there's you a tip about some of these fittings. If you're at the house, you find a bunch of leaks on your truck, and instead of going all the way to a truck dealer or Peterbilt dealer or Freightliner or whatever and getting these fittings and having to order them, you can just go to a hardware store, pull this out, and get a compression pipe thread fitting that'll fit that. Anyway, we're gonna get over here and we're gonna unhook the other side, and then the mounting bolts for this monstrosity. Sorry if I made you dizzy, but they're in this gap here, and I believe there's just 4 of them. that mount this, but there's back up in this gap here behind the mounting bracket and the frame. And I'm not sure what size they are. They kind of feel like they might be a 5/8. Either that or 11/16, but you're not going to get no socket up in there. It's going to be all wrench work. Well, I got these 3 lines off, and was able to rescue the compression fittings so I could reuse those. Now, if you're just doing the air dryer and the governor, let me turn this light on. Oh, I think I broke it. There it is. Alright, if you're just doing the dryer and you're not going to mess with the canister, if you look, darn it, there's a bolt here, and then there was one here and one there. So you can take these 3 lines off, you unplug that, unhook the feed line, you unhook the line here that goes to the governor, and then you've got your primary and secondary lines here, and you pull these 3 bolts out here, which are really super tight. But you get them 3 bolts out, and then this whole unit right here will come off. So it's not going to be too bad to remove. But if you're going to be changing that canister right here, good luck, because those bolts are tight, they're hard to get to. Now that the air dryer and the governor's off and out of the way, you're going to take some kind of a wire brush, probably like a battery cleaning brush or a shotgun cleaning brass brush, and you want to clean up in these threads here. And if you got a tap and die set, now'd be the time to find that coarse thread and run that in and out of there a couple times, clean that rust out. Whenever you put it back on there, you want to put a little bit of grease or a little bit of no-sees on these bolts. Because, I mean, they're under here, you get a bunch of salt and stuff like that on, you know, up in everything underneath this truck. And you want to clean these threads up real good and put some of that no-sees or some grease or something like that on these threads so it'll come back off a lot easier when you need to. But you want to take you an earplug and put it in this hole right here. And the reason being is you set that earplug in there when you clean these out so you don't get any dirt and trash up in your air system that could cause a plug later. Alright, so now we get to drag that out. Drag my fat butt out from under here and switch over all these fittings to the new air dryer. And then after we get it all switched back over, we can put her back together and see if it's working or not. And right about now, when I start cleaning stuff up, I think it's a good time to grab me a cup of coffee. Alright, now that we got this monster out here so you can see it a little bit better, like I said, these 3 here are the compression fittings that I replaced because they had those quick connects on them. And you're going to want to change these over to the new unit. And the main feed fitting here, you're going to want to change it over. And you're going to have to pull this air compressor governor off, which these are Torx tips. And they look like they're about a probably a T30 or T32. But you want to take them off. And these 2 right here, there, and right there are what mounts this governor on. On some of these, they have Allen bolts that go in here, and some of them have the Torx. And then you're going to have to change over these 2 quick connect fittings for your primary and secondary. There and here. Now if you look on the back side where this mounts, you see we got this side here, it's blocked off. And then the upper side is open that goes up into that, that big air chamber. And then here is your filter. Now to take these filters off, if you don't have a wrench, you can use a belt, like a V-belt. And let me walk in my shop and grab a V-belt on got laying around. I'll show you how to do that. But you tie a V-belt onto it, and then you put a bar in that V-belt, and you can use it to pry to spin that off with. We'll just grab this one off here. Anyway, alright, let's go back out here. And I'll just show you on this here. It's going to be real easy to set up. You just take the belt like that, and you tuck it around the filter. And if you look, I pull this way, this belt would get tighter if it was on something larger. So you put this belt on there and you stick a bar through it, and you use that to take that filter off. And then to put it on, you take that belt, flip it over, put your bar in there, and you wrap the belt around it until you can lock it down tight. See, that wasn't even on camera. But anyway, you just put the belt on like that, put your bar in this loop, and you see how it gets tight? When I pull on it this way, it will get tighter. And that's how you take them filters off. I mentioned earlier that some of these fittings, these quick connects, you can replace them with compression fittings. Well, these are for your 1/4-inch lines that go on the air dryer. And those are compression fittings, and they're about $4 a piece. Anyway, that's the part number. And they're actually a 1/4-inch pipe thread on this end, and then it connects to a 1/4-inch plastic line, and there we go. And a 1/4-inch line goes through this, so you put that nut up on your 1/4-inch line, and then you slide this up on that line, and whenever you seat this down in there, your line shoves down in here, and you shove that line in there as far as it'll go, and then you slide this brass O-ring down. And once you get that brass O-ring slid down, then you slide the nut down that line and tighten it up and snug it down pretty good. And these, you have less of a chance of these leaking than you do the original quick connects, which are over here. And I went ahead and decided to use these again because they're still good. I put these on there several months ago. I don't think it's been a year yet. Now, also when you do these, some of these holes have to be plugged off for different applications. So the old plugs would not come out of the old air dryer. I tried and tried, they just would not come off. They just kept rounding out. So I picked up this 1/4-inch CTK sunken plug, and it is brass, and it's got an alum head on it. And of course all these fittings here have been Teflon taped, just like the main fitting that comes in from your air compressor. Now on these setups, on these Bendex, at least on this particular truck, you have two lines coming off that air compressor. One goes in here, and if you're not getting any air on the primary or secondary side here, you can unhook the compressor line right here. Now that is if there's no air on either one of these two fittings, which you can see it's marked secondary, and this one here is marked primary. If you're getting no air out of these whatsoever, unhook this and make sure your compressor's pumping air. Real easy way to see if your compressor's working or not. Alright, if you're not getting no air pumped out of here, go up here to your governor and unhook this line. And whenever you unhook this line, it takes the pressure that this puts to your compressor out. So then your compressor will lock in. And if your compressor is still not locking in after you get this unhooked, and you get no airflow into this from that compressor line, your compressor's bad. But if you got air coming from your compressor to here, but there's none here, then you've got to replace this unit, this air dryer unit, because there's something plugged up inside of it. Anyway, there's how you diagnose if you have no air whatsoever in your truck and the compressor won't air up. Now, if you're getting either only air in the primary or only air in the secondary, you can come down here and unhook these and see if there's air here. If you got air coming out here to whatever system is not getting air, then you got to plug further out from this. Probably in the crossover box. There'll be a crossover box up above your tanks, and that's probably what it is if you're getting air out of both of these. If there's no air coming out of this, then again, this unit's bad. Replace it. So let's go back underneath there and put this thing back on. Now, whenever I put the bolts back in this, I'm going to put some anti-seize on the bolts so that they don't corrode up like they did, of course. I mean, this unit here's got right at 800,000 miles on it, so I doubt I'll have to replace this again before you replace the truck. But just in case, I'm going to go ahead and set myself up so it'll be easier. Anyway, let's get to crawling and cussing and grunting again. I got my 3 mounting bolts down tight. I put the no seize on those. Now it's time to start hooking up some of these lines. And you just shove it in and then give it a tug. Just like that, and give it a tug. And then this is that controller line right here that I was telling you about that goes from your governor to the air compressor, and it tells the air compressor when to kick in and switch off. And here is your main feed line coming from the compressor, charging your entire system. And then make sure you don't pop that plug off until you're ready to plug this in. You don't want to get any dirt or trash down in there, and that just snaps in there. And once I'm done buttoning that up, I've got my 3 lines that go on this side over here that I told you about the compression fittings on. Now you can see the compression ring that are on those. But once I get done tightening this up and snapping that in the rest of the way, but I don't want to put that in just yet until I tighten this up because I don't want to break the wires. So I got to tighten this one up, put these 3 in, and then snap it back on, and then we could test out this system after I crawl back out from under here and see how it works. Now, if you have a blockage in these, don't just buy the governor or the dryer or just replace the filter. If there's a blockage, there's a problem. And you don't know where the problem is. It could be in the governor, or it could be in your filter, or it could be in this unit here. And let's say you've already changed your filter and that didn't fix it. So whenever you go to replace this, replace the entire unit. Get the kit. See how the governor, this air dryer, and your filter all in one unit to make sure you get rid of the issue. Because, I mean, it's like $500, and it's peace of mind. Because eventually the governor and that filter is going to go out anyway. You know, it's just a matter of time, and realistically, you pay $500, you buy the whole unit, and then you don't have to do what I'm doing right now and crawl underneath here to service this unit. You should be good to go for 100,000 miles before you got to change that air filter, 100,000+ miles before you got to change that filter again. So you might as well do the whole thing now while you're under here and save yourself a headache of doing this again.
Here. Now see, normally these trucks go up to 100 psi before they start building up the secondary, and as you can see, now we're starting to build up the secondary air tank. So looks like we have resolved our issue by replacing that air dryer, the air compressor governor, and the air dryer filter. Which, there's the old unit on the ground, about 781,000 miles on that old unit. So I'd say it's worth $500 to get that kind of mileage out of one before you got to replace it. And
and we just saved ourselves a massive shop fee because we're not paying for the diagnosis, we're not getting it towed 80, 100 miles all the way down there to the shop and all that. And I tell you, adjustable wrench, some Teflon tape, a few pipe fittings, a 9/16 wrench, 9/16 ratchet, and a 1/2-inch wrench for the small line fittings, and that's the tools we needed to do it. And a lot of drivers will be out there, and you guys will have a lot of the stuff you need to do it. But there it is, good as new again. Thanks, guys. I hope you find this helpful, and any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.